Starting now, this is Real People. Real issues. Real news. Real people.
Hey, welcome to Real People. It's Stephanie Allensworth. My guest today is somebody that I've just met recently at a class. We're taking a class together at the National Speakers Academy. She is a writer and a speaker. Her name is Allie Sands, and I'd like to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, tell us about your book. Yeah, you go ahead and say the title.
Okay, my book is called I Know Who You Are, But What Am I? And it's a journal that I wrote beginning the day that my partner told me that they wanted to transition from female to male because my partner is transgender. And over the course of about 4 years, I wrote on a regular basis, probably weekly, about my experiences and what I was feeling. And I intended that journal to be for our private communication with each other. And I would use it as a way to stay connected to him throughout his transition because I was concerned that we would grow apart. And so over time, it was a very large journal and a manuscript. And different people in the community that needed help would ask me if they could read parts of it because there wasn't anything like this for people to get support. And so I'd start allowing people to read pieces of it. And fast forward to about 2015, I found a publisher that was interested in editing it and publishing it so that other people in my situation, or people such as yourself, or anyone in the general public that wants to know more about transgender issues and just what it's like to be in a relationship like I am, could be more understanding around that through my book.
Well, I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
And obviously there was nothing like this before. So,
there was nothing there for me, that's for sure, when I was going through this.
And no online groups or support groups or anything like that?
Very few. And friends that I met through the community here in Minneapolis, we started groups. But there was very little as far as support for partners at that time.
Yeah, that and that has to be a little different when somebody says to you, I'm going to transition into a man."
Mm-hmm.
And tell me really your first thought when did you suspect it at all?
That's a really good question. We were together for about 3 years, and I knew that my partner was a very non-traditional female-bodied presenting person because they always wore masculine clothing and a more masculine identity was always being presented by him. And so I knew it wasn't completely a surprise to me. However, both he and I at that time were 40 years old, and neither of us knew a lot about transgender issues, hadn't been exposed a lot to people that transitioned from female to male. I'd seen people in the community that transitioned from male to female, and it was a very high learning curve for me at that time. However, that being said, I was 100% supportive of what he needed to do to feel whole in himself. I could see and I knew that this was his truth.
Oh, that's beautiful, though, for you to be able to recognize that too, and then be there for him the whole time. That's wonderful. So what other challenges? I mean, did he talk to you about how he was feeling and the how long you'd been feeling that way and what the trigger was?
Well, like I said, it was a really high learning curve for both of us. It's ironic that he was living his life very male identified in a female body and not really knowing what transgender was because he had gone to school for many, many years and really just was head down in his career and didn't really know anything other than what he'd seen out in the world. So we were on a learning journey together around this. And the reason why he was made aware of just the culture and the idea of having an option to be something other than male or female, which we call binary, is that he went to a coffee date with a friend who wanted to interview him about his gender, and she started asking him questions about how he identified. And one of those things was, if you don't identify as female, do you identify as male? And he said, I'm not really sure. And then she asked him, do you identify as being transgender? And she gave him books. She was writing her thesis about it. And he came home and he realized that these people that he was looking at were the same as he was. And that's like, everybody wants to be visible in some level, and that created a visibility for him that he prior had never had.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where it bursted open. And this was in February of 2005, which is literally the first entry of this book. And what's really great about the book is that it is exactly the real-time journal that I wrote. It's been edited, but it's not truly that much different than what it was.
Well, because that was going to be my next question. When did you start writing? So
2005.
Right when it all started happening.
The night he told me.
The night he told you. Okay.
I wrote the first entry to the journal.
I want to buy this one from you because I haven't read your story yet.
Well, it's my gift to you for having me on your show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. But I am definitely going to read it.
Great.
Because I think that it's something that I think a lot of people, like, you're doing such a service.
Thank you.
And people don't understand, they don't know, and they don't understand what you are going through on the flip side of the coin. And so tell me your biggest challenges. What were the hardest parts for you?
Through the transition? Well, one of the biggest challenges is just the physicality of transitioning. And back in 2005, there wasn't a lot available to people that wanted to have surgeries as far as having insurance coverage that would pay for those things. Now, I'd like to say before I go further that just because someone is transgender, it doesn't mean that they're going to or need to have surgeries to be able to claim that identity. That's their truth, and there's no modifying of the body that's required to be a trans-identified person. It just so happens that my partner really felt that he would feel better in his body if he did have some of those procedures. And so the disappointment around not being able to afford these types of surgeries, which is still a very true struggle for many, many people in our community. We are over $125,000 into our medical costs out of pocket.
Oh my goodness.
Now, thank you for some of the things that Obama put into place. A lot of these medical insurance companies are offering transgender care as an included piece in their insurance offerings. So more people are becoming more available and accessible to these needs and to these surgeries. So a lot has changed, and I'm really happy to say that a lot has changed, but a lot still needs to change. So the stress of those kinds of pieces on our relationship were great. They were great. And we were, you know, older than some of the people that are in their teens and 20s that are trying to figure this out. We had more resources. We are both educated people. We had a home. We have white privilege, which is in the face of what really happens behind the scenes. The trans community, it's the trans people of color who suffer the most in not having visibility, in being targeted for violence. We see it on the news. So we're really grateful that we could, over a 10-year period, figure out how to financially pay for this. And that was a huge stress on our relationship. Well, the other piece, more personally to me, is just that I had no idea what was going on. And so I'm learning as I go, and I'm trying really hard to make sure that I learn in a way that represents my partner without outing them to the community, because I identify as a queer female. So I was with a female-bodied person, and then that person transitioned. Now the world at large views us as a very heteronormative couple, and I felt very invisible in that. And those parts were difficult for me. That's why this book is wonderful, because I'm just out. I'm out about it. We're doing what we can to help communities and help people understand from a place of an inside of a relationship.
Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of interesting what you said. Like, you're out about it, but you don't want to out him. And
At the time.
At the time, okay. Was there some concerns that people at work or people that didn't know that he was trans would change their attitudes and, you know?
All of the above.
All of the above. I could probably go on, but I don't need to.
And everyone gets to, every one of us should be able to expose pieces of our own identity as we choose to do that, not have other people do it for us without our permission. But especially for a person who is trans or non-binary in this community, it's a safety issue. And it's a very important thing that we all are aware that as people that may not identify as transgender, we call that cisgender, or in the non-binary community, we have to realize that we have a privilege in that we don't have to fear being out about who we are. And that's a huge piece of it. I was a very protective partner. I still am. My partner is a fully out trans person, mentoring in the community, helping many, many youth and people just in general in our community. And I am so, so grateful that he's taken that leap in our relationship so that we can do this work together.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
At what point did you get married?
We got legally married in 2007.
Oh, okay.
And there's something kind of funny about that, because when we got engaged and 3 months before we got married, we couldn't get married because we were two female-bodied people. And in 2007, same-sex marriage was still illegal. And so it was really ironic because he got his gender marker changed on his birth certificate in his state of birth, which allowed him the next day to go and apply for a marriage license with me. But the day before that, we were illegal.
Oh, boy.
So we are legally married. We struggled with the idea of being legally married at that time, taking a privilege that so many people in our community couldn't have. But we realized that for our own personal reasons around me being his health proxy in surgical situations, I needed that title because I was the one that was with him making decisions, but also because it's sort of a big clap back to, you don't get to tell us if we get to get married or not. And thank goodness right now, marriage is legal.
Yeah.
And let's hope that that doesn't get taken away from anyone in our community.
I am very aware about the challenges through my own family when my brother was engaged and his fiance died and they were living together.
He had no
He
rights.
had no rights, absolutely zero say in any of it.
And in the LGBTQ community, those stories from the past are horrifying.
Yeah.
And we did not want that to be part of our story.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that it's just really a good thing that you did it because, of course, when going through all that as well at the same time, you never know, things can happen, right?
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
And it was a 10-year period that was really the transition, the physical transitioning time, and that's a long time to be not covering your bases legally around being able to make decisions for your partner.
Does it have to take that long, or is there steps included that have to just kind of like check marks through the way?
I mean,
along
it
the way?
depends on what a person wants to do around how they feel comfortable about how they identify and in their body. So I don't really, there's no like exact answer to that. Again, our struggle was around just finances and being able to save the money to have these procedures. Again, you know, $125,000. What we ended up doing was selling a house and using all of the equity that we had gained from that house to be able to complete all of that. There's many people in our community that will do very desperate things to have procedures that they need done, including just getting hormones.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot about safety and visibility, and that's part of why both my partner and I decided we should publish this journal, is so that we could bring some inclusivity and normalcy to our community, to the communities outside of ours. Because when I speak publicly, which I do quite a bit, I tell the vulnerable story about my relationship with my partner. And when people are connected through a story, they're much more inclined to open their heart to understanding and learning and gaining knowledge and becoming allies and advocates for whoever they're listening to. And as you and I both know, they talk all the time in our speaking class about storytelling.
Yeah.
So I try to get as vulnerable as I can without compromising my relationship with my partner.
Right. And how do you feel that would compromise? I'm just curious.
Well, you know, you don't want to get too intimate about your personal life. Up on a stage or you know, on a podium. I did a TED Talk, so there, you know, there's a lot of sort of opening your heart to people in a way that a lot of people never do. And yet I feel it's my legacy work to do this kind of speaking because I know there's so many people that merely just misunderstand what it means to be outside of the gender binary, which is the male-female construct that we've created around gender.
Right.
And I do a lot of educating when I speak around the language and the terminology and that kind of thing as well.
So are you going to be full-time speaking and promoting your book?
That would be the goal, Stephanie. That is the goal. I am also just sort of allowing it to organically grow. The book is in its second publishing. It was republished in 2019.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a new cover, and it has some new information in it. And I am really honored and excited that the Advocate magazine shows it in January of this year as Best Memoir of 2019.
Oh, nice.
So I'm excited that more people will have access to it, and it's on Amazon.com, and people can read sort of an inside story of what it's like for the partner, from the partner's perspective, and how that has kept us together. How that resilience is about just focusing on your love for another person. It's really not that different than anyone else's relationship.
Right, and you say that too. It's love has no boundaries.
Right, love appears in whatever form it chooses, right?
Right.
Yeah. I said when I spoke on the TED stage that love chose us. It chose us again and again and again, and I'm sure you'd say the same thing about your relationship. It chose us in the hearts and the minds and the bodies we were in those very moments. And we're all changing, right? We're aging. I don't think any of us has a choice not to. And if you really look at it from that perspective, it's all about the resilience you create in those changes with your partner.
Wow. When you throw these dates out there and the changes that have happened since then, it just feels like it hasn't been that long. But 2007 is a while back,
And also for our community, these changes are monumental when they happen.
Yeah.
In both directions. I mean, you're seeing the rights being taken back by this administration that we're under right now every day. We jokingly sometimes wake up and say, we better look at the news this morning and see if we lost any of our rights as a trans couple. And it's not really funny. But it's sort of important for me that we keep abreast of what's happening so that if I need to know specifics about healthcare, if something happened to my partner in an emergency, is there something I need to know more about around where he can go, where he can't go in medical situations? And that's true for this community.
Yeah. Well, let's pray that it never comes to that. I would like to think that what's done is done here and that there will be no reversals in that respect. But if there is, then there are legal courses you could take. You could become his guardian, or power of attorney, but that only takes you so far.
Right.
So, but the legal guardian or representative. I mean, and I'm just saying that because I've been through so many legal things with my family. I've helped a bunch of my family members out. So,
but it's really important that everyone hears this, that everyone that's out there listening right now, that through your education around this issue and your advocacy, your voice will be heard by a government that doesn't want loud voices.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really important.
Got to keep screaming.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have another business too, though, right? Or maybe I saw some old information about a launch of a chiropractic?
My partner is a chiropractor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and also does a lot of amazing work around that for the trans and queer community, and has sort of made it his intention in the rest of his career to really focus on helping LGBTQ members to get health equity around healthcare, and especially with holistic health, which is what he practices.
Right.
And also keeping a safe space in his clinic where people know that they feel welcome and they feel comfortable to be there, and offering information and knowledge they might not be able to get anywhere else. Stephanie, we're really lucky to live in Minneapolis because Minneapolis is very forward thinking around issues around trans healthcare and trans inclusivity. And that is a really important thing. But the rest of our country, not so much. And there's a lot of learning that needs to be done.
I think it's not just learning, but releasing the fear. I think there's fear and just garbage that's been passed down through generations and generations of bad thought patterns that people have, and they just don't know any different. I mean, I'm not trying to give anybody an out that's ever been a jerk, but education is like this. This is
Right.
education. This
Yep.
is where it starts. And with you going out and speaking, because this is like, we never hear this. We never hear anything from the other side, right? Never.
You mean as far as a partner goes?
As far as a partner goes,
Yeah,
right?
it's very rare.
Yeah. And I applaud you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Definitely. And I know that you're going to do just great things.
Thank
and
you.
I know a lot of people in the community that are going to appreciate not just this video, but your book as well.
Thank you.
So just keep that good stuff going.
Thanks. It feels really good on the inside of this because I have a lot of connections all over the world, actually, through social media.
I'm sure.
Of people in our community who reach out to me and ask me for my advice when I feel very humble about that. And yet, I do think that I know a lot through my own experience of how I can talk another partner through something that might be really hard, or tell them that I'll be available to them through a partner surgery. So it's a great inside feeling too.
So does that maybe bring you towards doing some coaching and counseling as well on the side?
I am not
perhaps?
qualified to do that. I'm really not. My work is really about public speaking and writing as an author, and really reaching out to communities of people that don't have this information and that might want to learn more about that. I do some workshops around identity for the partners, and also just identity in general. I can talk all day long about identity because I've had to search, what is my identity and where does it come from? If your partner is changing, if they're changing their sex, what does that mean for you?
Yeah.
If you stay in that relationship, does that mean you no longer have the identity you did have? So I've done a lot of that.
Let's just do a little deep dive into that.
Okay.
So what did you come up with?
That's a great question. I identify as a queer female. I'm a cisgendered woman, and I also realize now that people have asked me so many times throughout this process, well, if your partner is transitioning from female to male, what does that make you? And my answer now is, it makes me nothing. I am me. I am Allie. My identity doesn't change based on who I am partnered with, who I am in love with. It doesn't change my identity. It means that I get to stay static in what changes I find in myself instead of on the external. And so I ask people questions, where does your identity come from? And is it so grounded in things you've been taught that it doesn't shift at all through your lifetime? Or are you open to the fluidity of changes? And that includes our gender and our sexuality. And I know a lot of people are really uncomfortable with that topic, but I'm not. And I'm happy to discuss with people why it's really important to look at that.
Yeah. Wow, that's really, really good stuff.
Thank
right there.
you.
I mean, because your identity, like you say, you are you. You will
That's
always
right.
be you, but we all have the flexibility to change whoever we are whenever we want. I try to reinvent myself all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really awesome. And I tell people that I fell in love with her, and I use quotation marks because that's just a pronoun, right? I fell in love with her, but I grew in love with him. We became who we are now through his transition and his identity as a male, and that is why we are where we are. I don't need to explain to people how I can be with a man and be a queer identified female. It doesn't matter to me if they completely understand that or not. It's just my identity. It's just like when a trans person tells you, these are my pronouns. You take that for face value. And what's really important about all of this topic is that respect costs nothing for any of us. If you want me to honor something about you, the respect that I'm giving you costs me nothing. So all of these arguments and conversations and it's not right and this and that, nothing of that matters. It doesn't matter. It's just a level of human respect that we give to each other.
I so identify with that.
Thank you.
Respect is really all it takes.
It is.
You don't have to say yes, you don't have to say no, you don't have to have an opinion.
That's right.
Just respect yours.
Yep, and then just go home and buy my book and read it and understand
there you go.
more.
Yes, go home and educate yourself, please.
Right.
Buy the book.
Right.
First buy the book
That's
and
right.
then go educate yourself.
Or many other books that are out
yeah.
there that are way more about just absolute education around gender and trans stuff.
So more books in the works for you? What do you think?
Not right now. I'm really working on the speaking piece, and I'm really excited about getting out there and speaking to groups and communities that might benefit from my information and grow as a group because of it. So that's really what I'm doing.
I think that's fantastic. So anything coming up on your website, right? Do you have schedules of things that you're doing so
yes,
people can follow you?
Yep.
Right?
I have an event coming on February 9th in Brom, Minnesota, which is an hour north of the cities. It's a PFLAG, which is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. It's an old organization that's really evolving itself, actually. So I'm speaking at their group on February 9th.
Nice.
That's my next.
Nice. Yeah, I would love to come see you speak. I mean, I get to see you speak
We'll have
every
to
now
find
and
out.
again here.
Yeah, we'll have to find out.
Yeah. Well, we see you at class, and of course we're on the group now.
Right.
Yeah, I just think that what you're doing is definitely a service that is needed, and I can't thank you enough for being the person that you are and brave enough to be yourself and talk about it.
Thank you.
So we've got just a few seconds left. So I just want to remind everybody again, Allie Sands. There we go. Allie Sands, and her book is on sale at Amazon. I know who I am.
I know who you are.
I know who you are.
But what am I?
I practiced it 10 times and I got it wrong.
It's okay.
Well, thanks so much for being here, Allie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I just look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you.
Bye now. Thanks for keeping it real here with real people. Bye.
Like us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Twitter. We're also streaming on YouTube, so check us out there.